For the longest time, I kind of trashed on liberal arts. I thought it was kind of a hoax compared to computer science or like a engineering degree where you get a real job and actually do something for the world. But my thinking is kind of expanded now more than that. I think there's still a lot of like hoax and scam like stuff in certain majors and certain fields, but there's a lot more to it than just a dismissive, the humanities are bad, STEM is good. And maybe obvious to some of you, but some of you maybe not. So I thought I'd go over it. So, computer science at its core is not a degree that I'm saying is a bad to get at all. It's not something you should discard completely because I'm just saying get another degree in the thumbnail or something to be rage inducing. But the problem with it now is it's become so career focused. It's become so, I'm going to get a computer science degree so I can code, so I can get a tech job, so I can make money, so I can do XYZ, support my family, whatever. And I mean, the economy is bad, so I get it. I get the wanting a job. Everyone wants money, right? You don't want like an anthropology degree or something where you're going to do some, who even knows. The problem is so many people are doing that, and the industry is becoming so oversaturated with programmers, it's kind of turning into a big slop fest of nothing work, which is, for one, everyone's going to get paid more, or paid less, sorry. And it's also just so unfulfilling and terrible. If you're anyone who needs any kind of like, if you're someone who watches this channel, you're most like a very obsessive hard worker, you're going to be kind of miserable in most environments like that. But not necessarily. There are exceptions to that. There are companies that do real cool work, but there are tons and tons of positions that really don't, and you're going to be in meetings all day kind of doing nothing and moving data around. But yeah, it's actually kind of tipped now. So there's so much like so many people in engineering and like engineering firms and like big software companies that wanted that engineering salary that it's almost, I think the hiring rate of art history majors just surpassed that of computer science majors. But that's not a full dismissal of computer science as a field, because if you are really into it and you want to go deep on the theory or deep on like low level, like how operating systems and stuff work, if you're a really motivated person, you can kind of shoot past all that generic career grinding. There's just going to be a lot more of it maybe in the beginning now than you're used to, because colleges are gearing for that kind of thing and are going to have more kind of software engineering focus. But yeah, theoretical computer science is still an amazing field to study. Then there's math, which is what I'm doing. And the reason for that is I'm like so BS averse that I decided to pick math because it's like so hard to come up with fluff and random stuff. It's just like hard and fast rules that you learn, like traditional school, the way it should be. No made up classes or anything like that. And math is great. The one thing I will say is it's a little bit heavy on the theoretical side, whereas computer science, you can maybe tie in some, you maybe will have chances in school to work on projects that'll help out your portfolio or whatever. Sometimes a little career stuff is nice. And math, the career stuff is, I find, more oriented towards becoming a math teacher, professor, or like grad school and research than it is software engineering, which is unfortunate because a lot of math majors become software engineers just because they have the same kind of logical and disciplined skill set. So those are the two big ones. Then there's also like electrical engineering and all the other kinds of engineering. And those are all, it's exactly the same argument, right? You can be kind of mid-tier at it and go into like a firm and not have a great, very interesting career path. Or if you go really hard into it, you can do amazing things with those skills. So pretty similar. But now onto the liberal arts. Which ones do I recommend? So I think basically analogous to math is classics, which a lot of people don't know anymore, and it's really sad. Like you say it and like a lot of people are like, huh, what's that? It's the study of ancient languages, mostly Greek and Latin, also sometimes Sanskrit if you're really hardcore. And it also usually has a history element to it, kind of incidentally, because you're reading texts that take place in the past, obviously. So you'll kind of get some history and maybe you'll have a class on context. Basically though, why would you do this, right? Why would you take something so unrelated to everyday life? Now, some people argue like learning Latin, learning Greek will give you a better understanding of English and like modern languages. That's somewhat the case, yeah. I guess linguistics though is more, that's a field more targeted at that. The bigger thing is it's exactly like math. It'll teach you discipline and how to think about things. You will get hard skills. They might not be quite as immediately career applicable as like math is to, I don't know. It's hard to say that because you're both kind of going into more pure, very focused things. And classics, like learning ancient Greek, is very difficult and it's very math-like. You know, you're memorizing tons and tons of little like rules and equations to be able to decipher text. And yeah, it is tough because sometimes it feels like you're in a pyramid scheme. You know, like what do I do with this? It's practically, career-wise, as a skill, like other than getting a PhD and teaching it to more people. But I've thought that way for a very long time, you know, and like my dad who teaches classics was like tried to convince me and I was not convinced. I was like, hey, you won't get anything out of that. But now I think it doesn't matter so much because the math skill is so abstract anyway. You know, you think it's kind of computer science related, but to be honest, it's really not. Like, I've never used anything in my math degree in programming really, other than like sine and cosine, you know, and that's like high school math. And it's possible I just haven't done enough, but like I feel like all the programming projects that use advanced math, like beyond linear algebra or any kind of like graph or group theory, I've had to just do the research on my own, and it's not very hard to figure that stuff out for like an individual application versus in a math class, you're kind of solving on an exam and you're being very rigorous, and like you wouldn't do that in the real world solving a problem with topology or whatever. So it's very similar to that. And the advantage is the people are very interesting and you're immediately a lot more niche. Like I know a guy who's at a very cool job because of his ancient Greek degree. Like they're like, what the heck are you? Yeah, this is a cool guy. This is different than the norm of math and computer science. And if you learn this stuff on your own anyway, it's like it doesn't matter. You might as well take this very cool field and you'll have a bunch of problems to solve no one else is tackling. The other thing is the field is dying completely because of this whole career grind nightmare. Departments everywhere are shutting down so rapidly. Like our department, our grad program just got basically destroyed, and like every day more things get cut and they lose more funding because career grinding normies are just taking everything with engineering jobs. And it really is a shame that this field is shutting down just because everyone was so eager to go into the slop economy and just produce more nothingless slop just because it makes slightly more money. And it doesn't even make slightly more money because now the scales have shifted. One thing I will say though about these very specific things, like classics is one example, another is maybe philosophy or anthropology, linguistics, or history. They have kind of less career load that they can take, you know? Software engineering has it can take a lot of people into it and give them jobs, whereas these, it'll get oversaturated more quickly. But right now, like they're so undersaturated because no one wants to take them, the career opportunities, in my opinion, are actually better. And you can find more interesting things. Like my archaeology internship, no one was gunning for that. Good luck. Like so many people this year in software engineering missed their chance to get an internship. And because I was looking towards the liberal arts and not just meaningless STEM stuff, then yeah, I got it. I also got some meaningless STEM stuff just for the career mark, but shoot towards the liberal arts a little bit more. There's definitely some substance to them. Another really cool thing is philosophy. That's a degree you could consider. So philosophy kind of gets a bad rep as like you kind of just sit there and think, and it's like the weed smoking, like nothingness kind of ponder, man, life is deep, man, kind of arguments. But that's very dismissive. It can seem like that because it's like math or classics now where there's like not actually a lot of real application if you think about it. But philosophy is pretty amazing because if you actually start to understand how like formal arguments are constructed. I've taken just a couple of philosophy classes and we did one on formal writing, like how do they write philosophy papers, and it kind of ties into formal logic. If you know like implication and modus ponens and biconditional logic and like all that stuff, it's really cool how that actually fits into arguments. And you read this whole thing like, here's my arguments like this, and you have to attack my arguments. You can't attack the conclusion. That doesn't make sense logically. And they kind of address objections and then they whittle down their argument, and it's all like so math-like and so rules-based. It's actually a very hard and fast field as much as it seems kind of like a conjecture and just talking about the world in abstracts. There's definitely like there's a set of rules that you can break and you can follow. And it also gives you such amazing context for how stupid the rest of the world is. Like you look at how masterfully these arguments are constructed and put together and all the formal logic and stuff that they put into them, and they're like debating back and forth with each other and they're all like chipping down things and following all these rules. And then you see like public debates, you know, where people are just slamming each other with fallacies, like just insulting each other, attacking just blatantly the wrong part of they're like attacking the other side of the implication, like what the thing implies. That literally does nothing to defend the argument, but people are so like stupid and so kind of drawn in by these emotional arguments that they accept that as the truth. And you look at this and it's just like, oh my God, how is this huge raging debate going on in public in front of all these eyes, and how are so many people invested in it when they have no idea the underlying like logical flaws here? These arguments are all horrible. They're based on nothing. And the funny thing is, the really funny thing is, especially on like binary arguments, like the abortion argument, a lot of people kind of don't see the difference because that's an unsolved pretty much argument. You can argue both sides very effectively. If you've read that, there's kind of two papers that like are the token defense and offense of that are both great and have a lot of great points. So it's kind of unsolved, right? And in the philosophy community of people that are really into the logical arguments, it's up in the air. I would say there's more pro-choice people than pro-life, but it's still up in the air. Whereas that's exactly the same case in the general audience. So it feels like an illusion, like, oh, this philosophy didn't get us anything, you know? It's still just kind of an unsolved issue. But one side of the unsolved issue is like really masterful thought and logic and like all these years of human research into how we come to conclusions well. And the other side is like random emotional conjecture that has like no point to it. And it's just utterly ridiculous, and it's so funny that it turns out to kind of be the same end result, even though one of the processes is way more valuable. But if we ever get to, and we do all the time, an issue that's not black and white and binary, then we should never look towards the people that are just screaming the emotional nonsense. We should look towards the logical philosophers to figure anything like that out. So it is a very important field. Aside from, like jobs-wise, I don't exactly know. I know a guy who worked in astrophysics and philosophy, and he's now like a professional animator. So another example of you can just go wherever you want, provided you have the drive and ambition. A degree is kind of meaningless, to be honest. In undergrad, people put way too much emphasis. It's more of just like a small structure for you to do your own projects on. That's where the real learning is going to come from, not really from classes anymore, except for very like hard real analysis kind of classes. But yeah, that's philosophy. That's another one I'd recommend if you love thinking about the world. Don't get pretentious about it though. Philosophy has kind of become a very reference other people's works type field because the original thinking is rarer and rarer. It's like math. You're not going to be an undergrad and come up with your own works. It's going to be kind of referencing other people's ideas. And it's very pretentious when someone's like, oh, I've read this and this and this. These are my opinions. Like, don't cram that stuff down people's throat ever. If you're a philosophy major, don't like say you're a philosophy major, don't even recommend any books or anything, because I think, I don't know, it can come across as very cringe to other people. But if people are really interested in talking about philosophy, just talk to them and don't kind of don't shove all the terminology down their throats. Like, just imagine someone was very on the fringes of getting into Linux, you know, you would be, and they're a normie, you'd be basically selling the privacy, the customizability, and I don't know, the battery efficiency, whatever. You wouldn't be like, oh, have you heard of dmenu, heard of xdg, config, home? Like you wouldn't start just dumping technical terminology down their throat. That would scare them off. So philosophy majors, some of you are very pretentious, and just keep in mind that you shouldn't talk like that to people. But that's philosophy. English is another interesting one, and it can get you a lot too. There's the problem with English, and I've found kind of more abstract like fields like that where there's not a strong hard and fast rule set. English has like syntax and grammar, which is, but in terms of interpreting story, it's a little bit more vague in the beginning. Once you get to advanced English classes, advanced history classes, it becomes very, these are how you construct art, this is how you analyze text, this is what this person is doing here, here's all these structural elements. But there's a lot of kind of fluff you have to fight your way through in the liberal arts to get to that stuff, which I think deters a lot of people. But more people should be taking that stuff in general, because you get to the advanced stuff and there is some really cool deep knowledge to be had. There is another thing, the fluff argument, like the nonsenseness of English and all that stuff, is moving over to the STEM side pretty quickly, because just a lot of mediocrity kind of moves around. When there are a lot of mediocre people that switch to STEM for the career stuff, they kind of, like the HR people, the business, the communications, they kind of shifted over to being figures on the stem side, so now the fluff is almost swapped. Like I'd say it's about equal. You're not really getting any less fluff. Like there are just useless career classes I have to take at my school that are like actually brain dead, like elementary school levels of, and it's insane the amount of money people pay for stuff like that. But I can make a whole other video about why college is, I think, really broken right now. This is just talking about the different majors. So that's English and history. I will say there are some real like fucking terrible fluff classes. There's one class my friend and I took on race narrative, and that class, like first of all, the teacher used utilize. You know how I feel about that. That's a whole argument in itself, but it's not about utilize, it's about standing up for corporate meaninglessness and just using a word that's 3 times as many syllables to sound smart rather than use the extra meaning of utilize, which is make special use of a certain thing. There is one correct use case for it. I tend to shy away from it even in that correct use case because it's got such a connotation, but people using it outside of that is just like, it's kind of representative of the whole corporate nothingness, and I want to beat it back when I see it. But yeah, there's that race narrative class was just so many people, so many beginners in college kind of raising their hands and just saying the exact same useless stuff. Like she played a video of like a music video that had like Indian theming, and it was like, is this cultural appropriation? What do you think? And it like fucking obviously, yeah. And like 10 people raised their hands, added almost nothing to the conversation, said the same thing, just rephrasing each other. And it's like, really, are we sitting here doing that shallow of like, it's insane. This is actually a class. And it's such a problem that you can't really skip those in a lot of university progressions because you're losing a lot of your smart and dedicated people to the field because of this, or potentially. Like if you go into school and you know you want to major in English, you'll probably push past this, but for someone like me who's very BS averse but is totally open-minded to get good at any field, you've just like completely lost any of your chances of me getting to the higher level English courses because there's no way I'm sitting through 6 of these lectures to get to the good stuff. But that's just my opinion on that. I also think if you read a lot in your free time and if you take the extra time to follow up on like a little bit of theory, I've achieved way more doing that than anyone else. Like just reading the elements of style and then reading Donna Tartt and looking at her dialogue construction and also her narrative is like, I feel like I'm a better writer than any like English majors I've seen that are at the equivalent grade level in math, you know? And it's like, that's not even my degree, and I'm blowing you out of the water in terms of understanding. That really shows how much fluff there are at the intro level. But yeah, so that's my gripe with English, but if you're willing to push past that, yes, you can get some deep understanding. Let's see, what other, there was one, okay, then the other fields, the other kind of careerist fields that I'd find very shallow. So the worst offenders are business, economics, kind of a little bit less so because that has cool theory, communications, business management, that's even worse. That's like even a step in, like you're majoring in middle management. Jesus Christ, that's so depressing. And yeah, there's, I guess, like nutrition and exercise science and stuff like that. Yes, they target very specific things and they're very cool. But there's a lot of like athletes and kind of, they've become so dumbed down because of all the career seekers. And if you want to go study serious nutrition, you're going to have to fight through like a lot of stuff. Like one nutrition class I had was so bad that I talked to the professor and I was like, this class, I'm going to be honest, is a complete embarrassment for the university. And it just had so many spelling mistakes. It was so clearly copied off of Quizlet, and I could see because 10 Google search results would come up, and she said, no, that was because people copied off my course, which is funny because those are all dated earlier than your course was released. And the class had a textbook that was used for one problem that cost $120, which I pirated obviously, but can you imagine, like, you didn't know how to pirate that? Can you imagine the cash grab there? That's insane. It was such a surface level class too. I learned basically nothing because I'm a bodybuilder and I know about nutrition, but if people didn't know about nutrition, I don't think they would have got much either because the engagement was just so bad. There were so many spelling mistakes, grammatical mistakes, and so many things where she had clearly copied and pasted from another website because the font didn't match. You can so easily, it's literally, you press paste and hold option and control, or command and option, and that font going, like the font being different, goes away. You had to hold 2 keys and you couldn't even bother to look that up. Like, even if you didn't know how to clear formatting, how do I make this text looks the same? It's just, it was so like embarrassing that this was even a class, that I went and I told her that, and she actually like said, oh, I'll get your advisor involved. And I was like, no, I just want to talk to you. So I went and I spoke my mind. I wish I had gone harder on her, to be honest. Like, I was worried she was going to cry, but I would rather someone go and tell me like it is, even if it's like soul shattering that my entire work is kind of shallow and bad, than to go on existing like that for the rest of my life. You know, I hope she's doing better now. I hope she improved because of the advice I gave her. And some people, like my friends, are like, damn, bro, that's harsh. You're such an asshole. But yeah, I don't consider it like that, because I think I was genuinely trying to help her. And I did pull my punches when I was talking to her in person. I didn't say, I don't know, I kind of just let her talk from her perspective, and said a couple of things. But I could have gone off the rails like I just did on you and like pointed out everything wrong with it. There were a bunch of other things now that are not exactly coming to mind. I had like a whole folder of screenshots of examples of like why this course was so bad and so low effort. So I'm a little bit worried about intro level courses and anything that's highly related to career grinding. That's why I'm so in favor of classics and things that are less career grindy now, because they just get right to the substance of the course. But yeah, and then there's a couple other things like the business and econ people. Obviously, there's a stereotype that dumb people are in there. But again, like, you can rise past that to the advanced classes. There's really cool economic theory. You can end up as a quant on Wall Street or whatever. All the fields can be maxed out in a very cool way. I wouldn't dismiss any field just because you've taken one BS class. Like nutrition, for instance, there could be amazing theoretical research nutrition, you know, 6 levels up, but I'm not sitting through more classes like that. So yeah, there's that. I also wanted to ask a question. My friend and I were genuinely wondering, communications has the connotation around here as the dumbest major. It's like all girls who are going to end up in HR in a corporate environment, and mostly girls. I don't know why. I guess they, yeah. But like, what do you actually do in nutrition or communications beyond just like making a spreadsheet and conveying something to someone? One time I heard an example in my corporate environment where this lady was like saying, yeah, you asked like an open-ended question in the email, and that was such an invite, and this is like A+ communications. And I was like, really? Your whole field can boil down to that? That's pathetic. But we want to know, like, what's the grad level equivalent of communications? Like, is it some voodoo magic where you can like manipulate people into doing whatever you want, or like subconsciously convey things like that? That would be kind of cool, but I kind of doubt it. Well, I don't doubt it, actually. I fully believe it. Why would they have made an entire major around this if it wasn't useless? Unless it was just like a career move like some universities are doing now. But yeah. So that's kind of the overall conclusion of this. I'll make a whole nother video about the general brokenness of school, but yeah, just the different majors. I'm trying to think, did I forget any important ones? A lot of people, I guess there's law and medicine. Those are also kind of very career focused, but very essential and very hard. So those are both great choices because they're a concrete skill. I think there's less BS, and they are very hard and challenging. And law especially, like a lot of people take kind of policy law here at UVM, like environmental policy law, because we're such an environmental school. That's, yeah, that's a good field to study. It is a little bit like studying a field that's a little bit contrived, I feel like, which makes me a little uncomfortable, but I guess you could look at math the same way. It's kind of all invented, like we've come up with, like calculus is more based in reality, like you can do the calculations and see it exists, but you get to like endo-functor category theory and it's like, this is pretty much as abstract and weird as law. Like this basically doesn't have real, it has basis in reality, you know, but it's like when I'm not gonna whip this out on the basketball court and do something crazy. I guess you wouldn't do that with law either. You wouldn't, I guess you could be like, I'll sue you. I'll sue you for being in those shoes aren't environmentally conscious. You're legally classified as a corporation now, and then you sue them. But yeah, I guess it's just equally abstract, but I'm just rambling now. The main points of the video are across, and I'm hitting diminishing returns on information, but maybe it's still interesting to someone. People say they've been liking the longer form things, which I appreciate. I've always wanted to be a background YouTuber, you know, who just like talks and you like put on while doing chores. I think imagining people doing that is kind of fire. Because like I'm such a productivity YouTuber, you know, I like the idea that someone will listen to all of this, at least a few people statistically, and then be like, yeah, man, I'm getting stuff done and this guy just made my day a little bit better with his deep observations about something. So yeah, that's the thought process right now. I know that's how I kind of treated Luke Smith and other people that are more talking. It's kind of like a nice like lecture. It's like a lecture, but not about something very abstract. Yeah, that's all I have for you really. I'll catch you next time.